Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto stole the scroll of seals, but Mizuki never revealed the truth about the 9 tails. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. What do you think you're doing out here, Naruto? An out of breath and seemingly irate scar-faced, brown ponytail wearing Chunin Yumino Iruka asked rhetorically to a young blonde boy with whisker marks on his cheeks. He already knew, of course, everyone his level and higher knew. Naruto had been caught leaving the Hokage Tower with the forbidden scroll of seals, the scroll with tons of Konohagakure's secret and most well-guarded techniques ever amassed. This was right up there with treason, even for a child like Naruto. Hence why Iruka had hunted him down and found him deep inside of the forests outside of the village walls. Said boy simply held his hand behind his neck, rubbing it while grinning sheepishly. "I found you, Iruka-sensei." Iruka's eye twitched. "Idiot. I found you." His expression then softened. "Naruto, what on earth possessed you to take the scroll like that? Don't you know it's forbidden?" Naruto chuckled like a goof for a moment before standing up and looking proud of himself. "You caught me fast, Iruka-sensei. I only had time to learn one jutsu from the scroll." That one tidbit of information made Iruka's eyebrows rise under his headband in surprise. "But everything's okay now because I can graduate." "That's how it works, isn't it? I get the scroll and learn a jutsu from it and I can graduate even if I failed." There wasn't an inflection of lie in his voice at all that Iruka could decipher. Not that Naruto could effectively lie to a ninja his level anyway, but he was completely sincere. He honestly believed what he was saying. "Naruto, who told you this? I have to tell you now right off that it's not true." "Someone lied to you?" Iruka asked, seeing Naruto's face drop from one of triumph to disbelief. "What?" he said in a panicked voice. But Mizuki-sensei was the one that gave me the test. He said it was a makeup for the graduation exam." Hearing the despair in his voice worked Iruka's heart for the boy. He was deceived by someone that should have had his best interests at heart and was to be used as a scapegoat. And what could Naruto do? To trust your sensei to do what was right was no sin, no crime. If it were, then Mitarashi Anko would be locked away or dead by now for what her sensei had done while she was under him. Iruka shut his eyes so that he could think. Naruto was lucky he was the first one to find him. Others would have probably destroyed him before he even knew what was going on. Speaking of which, Iruka sent out a pulse of chakra so that he could see if anyone were around. It was one of Iruka's best techniques, sending out the pulse of chakra to get something of a momentary sonar image of his surroundings, the secret behind how he was able to tell if anyone in his class was slacking off or goofing off even when he had his back turned to the chalkboard. Naruto looked up at Iruka, his eyes on the verge of tears. "Iruka-sensei, am I in trouble?" Naruto had no idea what to do in case he were. "Fight, Iruka." "Yeah, as if." He may have had a lot of bluster, but he wasn't a fool when it came to his own capabilities as a ninja. He knew Iruka could pick him apart if necessary before he could even do the seals for his new super strong technique, and what good would beating up Iruka do even if he could somehow pull it off? If he did that, he definitely wouldn't be a ninja afterwards, which meant no Hokage for him. There was no reason to even fight. Iruka sighed before letting out another pulse of chakra. No one around yet. What was he going to do? He placed a hand on Naruto's hair. "To be frank, more than likely. But you were just doing what your sensei told you to do to become a ninja. If you come with me, I swear on my status as a Konoha Chunin that I'll do whatever I can to vouch for you and help you get out of this," he said with as much conviction as he could. He could see the subtle movements of Naruto's body. He was trying to decide whether he would run, fight, or just give up. If he ran and Iruka couldn't catch him again, the next person that found him would leave Naruto a bloody smear on the forest floor, and the sad thing about it would be that he really didn't think that too many people would care if that did indeed happen. Poor kid, Hokage-sama was right about him. Naruto looked at Iruka intently. Mizuki had already lied to him today apparently. Who's to say that Iruka-sensei wouldn't either? But he did give him his word. Not just his word as a chunin of the village, and if there was one thing Naruto took seriously it was people giving their word. Do you promise? Iruka gave him a reassuring smile. I just gave you my word, stupid. He sent out another pulse absent-mindedly. He needed to get Naruto back to clear his name quick. As long as he kept doing this he was burning right through his chakra rapidly. Now let's get going, Naruto. His pulse actually got something this time, and it was coming at them fast. Naruto, look out. Iruka tackled Naruto to the ground just as a massive shuriken passed right where he had been standing a second earlier. Nice work, Naruto, Mizuki stated as he appeared standing on a tree branch looking down at him and Iruka, who had gotten back to his feet, standing defensively in front of Naruto. Now give me the scroll. Iruka's fingers flexed right by his kunai and shuriken pouch on his thigh. He already knows you deceived him, Mizuki. You should have been a bit faster, or maybe you couldn't find your own decoy. Maybe you should be the one going back to the academy. Iruka took a moment to pat himself on the back for riling Mizuki up. Mizuki sneered at Iruka before turning a kinder look to the young boy behind the scar-faced chunin. Naruto, did you ever wonder why everyone hates you? Everyone in the village knows about it but you. Naruto glowered at Mizuki. I don't care what you have to say, you bastard. You tricked me. Now who knows what's going to happen to me? If you think you're getting this scroll from me, you're going to have to walk over my cold, dead body to get it. Mizuki frowned. He really wanted to take the demon brat down a peg, but he was going to die whether he told him the truth or not, so it didn't really matter in the end. He shook his head before taking another large shuriken from his back. Well, that was the general idea when I had you take it for me, Naruto. No one would miss you once you were gone, trust me. Iruka looked back and saw that Mizuki's words cut deep inside of Naruto from the change of expression on his face. Even he knew it was true. Mizuki, Iruka growled lowly, surrender now. I don't want to have to hurt you, it doesn't have to be this way. Mizuki let out a loud bark of laughter. Why would I possibly surrender? All I've got standing in my way is a lackluster schoolteacher and the talentless dropout dead last of his class. If I lose to a glorified babysitter like you, Iruka, I deserve to be punished. Naruto, Iruka said firmly, keeping his eyes on his fellow teacher, I'm going to need you to stay out of the way. Can you do that for me? Get far out of the way so that you don't get caught up in this fight. He would have told him to go and get them some help, but if he went to anyone else other than himself, Naruto would probably have been immediately detained or even killed. It would have been a boy who cried wolf scenario. Naruto nodded hesitantly and picked up the scroll. However, the second he made his move to leave, Mizuki launched 3 shuriken at him. The only thing that saved him was some spot-on marksmanship from the instructor seemingly on his side in this situation. Iruka. You're going to fight for that little monster, Iruka? Mizuki shook his head as he saw Naruto vanish into the woods. I thought you were smarter than that. You know you can't beat me. All this grading papers for the last several years made you lose what little talent you have. Clearly you couldn't move up. Iruka wanted to laugh in Mizuki's face. Oh well, he was about to get his in just a moment anyway. Obviously he had been whipping himself into shape for this little plan of his, but it wasn't like Iruka had just been sitting on his doing nothing. Being the teacher he was, he had free rein and plenty of reason to head to the library, not just to gather extra material for his lectures. He also dropped in from time to time in the section set aside for exercises and jutsu, and while there was never anything too high level in there for all to see beyond basic and at the most intermediate techniques, that was never really a bad thing. Basics were basic for a reason, because they worked, and the tactics and theoretical ideas in tone were more than enough for someone like him. It helped him develop his sonar technique all on his own. Being the teacher he was, he also stayed after school plenty of times to finish his work for the day, when Mizuki simply got to head home as he was simply his assistant. Seemingly a good thing, but Mizuki had to isolate himself to set all of this up, to plan and prepare. How much could he train and improve on his own? Iruka didn't have that problem. All teachers were at the very least chunin by prerequisite, and they all trained together regularly after school to ensure their skills stayed sharp in case they were needed. He never remembered Mizuki ever getting that memo, as it was an ask-receive basis for that privilege. No one was going to make you train. Being the teacher he was, he may have been just a chunin, but he was a chunin with every single battle scenario worth memorizing and remembering ingrained in the back of his brain. Mizuki may have been treacherous and cunning, but Iruka could be just as cunning as he was, and he had the technical nuances of being a ninja all locked up in his head. While they may have been on a similar level of strength, and while Mizuki may have been slightly stronger than him, he knew he was better. Mizuki simply thought he was better, but in a straight-up fight Iruka was positive that Mizuki couldn't beat him. Naruto's no monster. I learned that a long time ago. The only monster I see here is you, turning a student's trust into a weapon against him for your own bidding. Iruka held a kunai in his right hand, ready for combat. Mizuki chuckled and drew his own kunai to humor Iruka. You should have just left Iruka. I tried to talk you out of this, just so you know. Why are you defending him? He's just the... Iruka cut him off sharply. I'm done listening to you talk. The next words I want to hear from you are your pleas to Ibiki to stop. With that, both men flew at each other in a blur of speed. At least it was a blur of speed to Naruto, who knew full well he couldn't move that fast on his best day. Iruka and Mizuki met on the ground, clashing their kunai against one another in a test of strength. Mizuki had a smirk planted on his face, while Iruka's face was one of focus and intent. In a burst of energy, Mizuki overpowered Iruka and threw him off balance before making a move to stab Iruka and end the fight. Iruka let the kunai sail past his throat, coming short of slashing out his esophagus, and returned with a short backhand with his free arm to Mizuki's face that the man blocked. Iruka was not deterred and fired off a side kick that caught Mizuki in the body, sending him back. It was just as he thought. Mizuki wasn't that much better than him, if he was at all. He hadn't used any jutsu yet, but then again Iruka hadn't either. Mizuki growled at being the one to take the first hit in this fight and threw the kunai in his hand at Iruka. Iruka simply used the kunai in his own hand to deflect it and came back in to press his new advantage. He was armed, Mizuki wasn't. Mizuki stepped back as he saw Iruka coming in to attack him and threw a handful of caltrops from his pockets right in his path to keep him from advancing any further. Iruka was forced to stop in his tracks or have his feet impaled by the spikes, but he was forced to take his eyes off of Mizuki, who immediately responded to Iruka's situation. He drew the large shuriken from his back and threw it. Iruka had ample time to prepare a kawarimi to switch himself out for protection, but the shuriken sailed right past him. What did he throw at? He missed me by a mile. The sound of the shuriken sailing off into the distance and cutting through things rang out, even something that sounded like a person, Naruto. Mizuki chuckled. Did you really think that brat could hide from me, Iruka? It was either let me kill him or let the others kill him once they found him. I just did it faster than they would have. I'm not surprised he didn't see it coming. He was ranked dead last for a reason after all. His gloating was cut off when Iruka's fist slammed right into his nose, spraying blood with the impact. All Iruka wanted was to beat Mizuki to a bloody pulp at the moment. After all of the things that Naruto had to deal with, and he was cut down by someone like Mizuki before he even had a chance to change the way he was seen by the villagers. One punch wasn't enough. He wanted to make Mizuki suffer for this. He never got to apologize to Naruto for being so hard on him all the time. He never got to tell him how alike they were and how much of himself he saw in the boy. But he could at least clear his name at Mizuki's expense, if nothing else. Mizuki was reeling after the first punch from Iruka, but after clearing the tears from his eyes that sprang from getting his nose broken, he realized that Iruka had gotten sloppy. His punches stopped being crisp and started looping far more than before, and he almost completely forgot about the kunai he had in his hand. Well, Mizuki remembered that it was still there. Mizuki shot out a short punch as a counter to one of Iruka's emotional haymakers and hit the man right in the throat. delighting in watching his eyes bulge out. It was a pity though, a little harder and he could have watched him strangled to death and been done with it. Iruka dropped his kunai to clutch at his throat, trying to catch some air after nearly having his larynx smashed by Mizuki, allowing the silver-haired man to pick up the discarded weapon and drive it into Iruka's shoulder to the hilt before he could aptly defend himself. He was only able to avert it from going into his heart. Mizuki scoffed, "You're being irksome, Iruka, just die already," he said, standing over the fallen instructor. "All of this simply to protect that useless monster. I bet you feel proud." He held his heel right on Iruka's throat, slowly descending it to crush it under his sandal. Iruka choked out a cheeky response, "He's twice the shinobi you are for sure, but then again what's 2 times nothing?" Seeing Mizuki's face twist into that scowl almost made the fact that he was about to die slightly better. "I'm good enough to kill you apparently," Mizuki said right before he planned on stomping right on Iruka's neck, planned because it never came to be. An orange blur came out of nowhere and plowed right into him, sending him flying back. XXX. Watching the battle between Mizuki and Iruka made Naruto feel completely out of his league. They weren't even using any jutsu. There was no way he was going to step into the midst of that. He'd get killed by accident. Every move was fluent and flowed. Either one of them would thrash him before he could finish hand seals for any of the jutsu he knew, except for the new one of course. He'd smash anybody with his new jutsu. But then Naruto was stunned. Mizuki really was trying to kill him. Once he got out of sight so that Iruka and Mizuki could fight, he started skulking around the battlefield, making use of his new jutsu to cut off any escape routes Mizuki might try to take once Iruka started kicking his. And then he felt his own death and heard Iruka shout his name, getting him to look from his cover out at the battle between Mizuki and Iruka, talking about how he had just died and how Mizuki had been planning to kill him all along. Seeing Iruka explode in rage after thinking that he died brought some happiness to Naruto. At least there was someone out there that would feel something if he just up and kicked the bucket one day. It was better than he thought it was at least. But when he saw Mizuki take the advantage over Iruka and move to finish him off, he couldn't take it anymore and sprang to action. Luckily Mizuki figured he had killed him with that shuriken and never saw him coming when he slammed right into him, taking delight in the fact that he sent him flying with a glorified body check. He stood in front of Iruka and glared out at Mizuki, "If you try to lay one more hand on Iruka-sensei, I'll kill you," he threatened. Mizuki stood up and dusted himself off before laughing at Naruto. "What exactly can you do? I just beat the only threat here. I'll kill you right out in one shot. Come and try it then. I'll send it right back 1,000-fold." Naruto roared at him, clenching his fists tightly. Mizuki must have taken that as a personal challenge because he came storming right in to take Naruto out. Naruto made a cross sign with his index and middle fingers on both hands as a large cloud of smoke engulfed the field. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, the entire area was filled to the brim with copies of Naruto. Every nook and cranny of the area was filled with them, even all over the branches of the trees. "What's the matter, Mizuki-tem?" one of the Narutos shouted. "Yeah, I thought you were going to kill us all with one shot," another quipped. "Well, since you're not coming to us, we're coming to you." And with that, the countless number of clones descended upon Mizuki and began beating the daylights out of him. The numbers were simply too much for someone like him to handle alone. Iruka was astonished. Less than 18 hours earlier Naruto couldn't make one regular bunshin, but here he was able to fill an entire forest clearing with the most complex clone jutsu known to Konoha, and he had done it seemingly effortlessly. That had to take an ungodly amount of chakra. How could he? Oh, yeah, that, duh. In a matter of moments Mizuki had been beaten to a pulp by Naruto and his countless Kage Bunshin, leaving one remaining Naruto standing over his prone form grinning sheepishly. "I guess I went a little overboard, huh?" "Not really," Iruka thought to himself. "Hey Naruto, come here for a minute and close your eyes." The boy blinked but curiously did as he was asked, allowing the wounded Iruka to quickly swap out the boy's goggles for his own headband. now go ahead and open them. Naruto looked at Iruka strangely when he saw that he was no longer wearing a headband. Congratulations, you graduate. Iruka wasn't sure if the sunshine hitting him in the face came from the sunrise or from the smile that spread across Naruto's face once his words had sunk in. XXX. The next day, Naruto had gotten one hell of an earful from the Sandaime Hokage after returning the scroll of sealing with Iruka the previous night. Naruto wasn't sure what he was more angry about, the fact that Naruto had actually gotten away with the scroll, or that Naruto had actually gone through the Hokage himself to get it. And people called Warok no Jutsu, sexy jutsu, a stupid waste of time. Anyway, after getting chewed out for half an hour, the kindly old man told Naruto he was proud of him and that protecting Iruka the way he did showed that he did indeed have the will of fire. He supported Iruka's decision to allow him to graduate and proceeded to give Naruto all of the information he needed for orientation the next week, where to go for the actual orientation itself, where to go to get his ninja ID photo taken, etc. Anyway, Iruka asked him to meet him at the academy the next day. Why? He didn't know since he was told orientation for new genin didn't happen until next week, but he figured he would humor his teacher and show up. He proved the previous night that he was someone Naruto could trust, and for that the least he could do was show up when he was asked to. It wasn't like Naruto was doing anything else either to not do so. With that in mind, Naruto headed through the streets of Konoha towards the academy. XXX. Iruka sat on the edge of his desk waiting for Naruto to show up. He was very glad that he showed the skill needed to graduate last night, but the conversation he held with the Hokage after Naruto headed home stuck out in his mind. Flashback. Iruka sat in front of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage who had lit up his pipe as he waited for Iruka to speak. For some reason the man had something else he needed to talk about regarding the events of the evening. Iruka looked like he was thinking on how to address the issue, but eventually opted to just speak. Hokage-sama, Mizuki came this close to telling Naruto about the you-know-what. If he hadn't cut him off when he did, it would have gotten out. The Sandaime nodded and let out a puff of smoke. Sometimes I wonder why I don't just tell him myself. I kept it a secret because it was supposed to help him be a normal boy like everyone else, but as we all know, that didn't exactly turn out as anticipated. You yourself can attest to that. Iruka nodded in concession to that. Do you want me to tell him? Iruka wondered. I think I'd be willing to, and I think he might take it better if he hears it from me in case another person like Mizuki tries something. The old Hokage laughed. I don't believe that after what Naruto-kun did to Mizuki there will be too many people lining up to attempt to use him for anything. As if Naruto-kun himself would let that happen again. He learns his hard lessons well enough. No, I don't think that will be necessary, Iruka-kun. I have someone I intend to have tell Naruto-kun himself when I can get him to return to Konoha. I appreciate the thought though. I just want him to enjoy his first days as a genin before I let him know about such a dark secret. He hasn't had a normal childhood, as we all know. Even as far as orphans go, he at least deserves to get a normal experience as a genin. Iruka couldn't even imagine having the pressure of holding back what Naruto had the responsibility of doing right now, and he was doing it unwillingly and unwittingly as a child. Knowing that an entity of chakra that nearly obliterated your home and snuffed out countless lives was sitting behind a construct of ink on your belly would turn the hairs of lesser men gray with stress. Iruka blinked at realizing what his leader had just said. Wait, you mean you're going to tell him at some point? From the way you just put it, I would agree with never telling him. It's worked so far. Hiruzen shook his head. I'm risking Naruto-kun's spite by not telling him for as long as I have, but one day he will need to know. The burden placed on him isn't just going to disappear, Iruka. No matter what he does, it will always be the elephant in the room. To anyone that doesn't know Naruto-kun personally, they will always see the shadow of the Kyuubi over him if they ever even see him at all. I could reiterate to the village over and over again that he is a hero, but that would do no good. They must come to their own conclusion on the matter. unfortunately for the most part it is usually the wrong conclusion. End flashback. Uruka-sensei, Naruto called out, sounding kind of hesitant. He slid the door to the room up at the top of the rows open and looked around before seeing Uruka at his desk. Hey there, sensei. You wanted to see me? Uruka sighed before smiling. Yes, I did, Naruto. I wanted to say that I'm very proud of you for proving that you were good enough to graduate, and also for saving my life. Naruto grinned widely as he started walking down the stairs towards Uruka and rubbed the back of his neck in what had to be his signature posture. No problem, sensei, I mean you saved me first, didn't you? I just returned the favor, hey. Uruka smiled warmly at the boy. Well, how about I teach you something in return for helping me out yesterday? Hearing the word, learning, from Uruka sent a shiver down Naruto's spine. Learning was usually associated with lectures. Lectures were boring. Naruto hated boring. Naruto slowly backing away towards the door. That's okay, sensei, I didn't do anything big. And besides, I don't need it, I graduated right, Dadbeo. Uruka gave Naruto a deadpan look. Naruto, I was going to teach you a jutsu. The word, jutsu, stopped Naruto right in his tracks and he seemingly teleported right into Uruka's face. A jutsu? You're going to teach me a jutsu? What is it? Is it a giant fireball? A tidal wave? What is it, Uruka-sensei? Uruka calmed Naruto down. I'll teach you this jutsu, but I want you to listen to me, okay? Naruto stood still and had a face of intent listening. Uruka cleared his throat. Now, as I said, I'm very proud of you for what you accomplished and you should be too. Naruto beamed a smile at that, but you should know that things are only going to be harder from this point on. I want you to take everything I'm telling you to heart, as if I've never tried to tell you anything before this, but this time I want you to really listen to me and take note. Naruto frowned, but he was getting a jutsu out of this. All right, Uruka-sensei. I'm listening. Uruka nodded and continued. You're going to be a ninja of Konoha, and that means that you're a soldier of this village, just like me. And just like me, you need to be ready to defend the people of this village with your life and do missions important to our prosperity. Naruto wanted to yawn. He knew this already. You have a responsibility to be the best that you can be. Whenever someone, especially another ninja, tells you something important, you need to listen. You also need to work at your weaknesses. Now tell me, what are you good at? Naruto immediately started. I've got the Warok no Jut. Be serious, Naruto. Uruka said seriously. Naruto squinted at Uruka. Why did no one take that move seriously? It's an effective technique. Alright, I have Henge, Kawarimi, I can't do the Bunshin, but I have Kage Bunshin now, hey. He tapped his chin in thought. My taijutsu is awesome. He felt Uruka's glare on him. Okay, my taijutsu could be better. And my genjutsu, he trailed off. Uruka sighed and patted Naruto's head. That's okay, Naruto, you're just starting out. But that's what I mean. You have to get yourself together. You need to get all of the academy katas down and finish learning the taijutsu. I know you still have all of the take-home things I gave you for when you all were learning them, and I want you to practice. But Uruka-sensei, I'm a good fighter. Naruto whined. Uruka shook his head. Those are the most basic forms there are, Naruto, made so that everyone can learn them, and they're good for branching out further for original styles later. It's a fantastic stepping stone. Everything you've learned in the academy is a stepping stone. The concepts of the 3 jutsu you had to learn are all rooted in the basis of many other far more complex jutsu. Kawarimi and Henge are 2 of the most adaptable ninjutsu in existence, hence why we teach it, but I'm going off on a tangent. You're telling me, Naruto told himself, still listening intently. Uruka rested his hands on Naruto's shoulders. I know you can be a splendid ninja if you put your mind to it, but you need to work hard. I don't want you to slack off like you were doing in the academy, because if you do it out in the real world it can get you killed. Tons of genin die on their first real missions because they weren't ready for what the life entailed. I don't want that to happen to you, so if nothing else I want you to keep these things in mind. Naruto saw that Iruka's expression was completely genuine and he had said these things out of concern for his well-being. Okay, Iruka-sensei. I'll try. Good. I'm counting on you to prove me right. After all, when you're Hokage, I want a raise for being the guy that was behind you all the way. He got a chuckle out of Naruto before he made a motion with his head. Now come on, let's teach you that jutsu I promised. Yada, Naruto shouted, almost making a dust cloud on his way out of the building. I'm getting an extra jutsu right out of the academy. Nobody else is getting that. Iruka's sweat dropped and followed him out. XXX. Iruka had brought Naruto outside to the obstacle course field that was now deserted, seeing as school was not in session. Okay Naruto, I'm about to teach you a move that I created myself. Hearing that Iruka had created his own jutsu made Naruto stare at him in awe, making Iruka feel pretty cool. People never think he's cool, so it was refreshing. Did you really make your own jutsu, Iruka-sensei? Naruto asked, gasping when Iruka proudly nodded. Wow. Yep. Iruka rubbed under his nose pridefully. It doesn't need any hand seals, and it's pretty simple in theory too. It just takes a burst of chakra really. It's kind of wasteful, but for someone like you I don't think you'll have any problems with it, especially after your little exhibition on Mizuki. Naruto laughed, remembering what he had done to get his rank. Alright, it's called Chakura Henkute no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu. It can be used to find things around you, like finding the location of things that you can't see. It's really good for tracking, or for scouting ahead for traps, or all kinds of things. It's a great sensor technique. Naruto squinted at Iruka throughout his entire explanation as if deep in thought, eventually unnerving the man. Naruto, do you have a question? Naruto simply kept staring at him with his closed eyes expression before he pointed abruptly. That's how you were always able to find me when I did stuff. Iruka's face faulted, seemingly validating Naruto's theory. Damn it, I knew I wasn't making mistakes of leaving tracks. Do you have any idea how insane that kept driving me? I thought I just at hiding. I was about to throw all those stealth lessons away and start just running in before fights since it looked like I could never stay hidden. Dadbeo. Iruka stood up and rubbed his face. If one thing was for sure, whenever he did his pranks Naruto definitely got some training in. So you started wearing that orange jumpsuit because I kept catching you and you decided to just discard all of the stealth lessons. Naruto looked away. No. I started wearing this last year, remember? Well, that was when I had the idea to paint the Hokage monument. Ha, I had it all planned out at the start of this school year, I just needed to test it. That and orange is awesome. Iruka looked at him strangely, jutsu lesson temporarily on hold so he could make sense of this. Wait. So you wore an orange jumpsuit to help you pull that off? Naruto nodded with a huge grin. Yeah. See, I started painting before the sun came up and I kept painting all through the sunrise in the suit. No one could see me when the sun wasn't up because it was pitch dark out and during the sunrise. Iruka's jaw dropped. The idea was actually brilliant. In the early sun, Naruto's jumpsuit would blend right in as the sun hit the mountainside, making the mountain glow orange, and as the sun rose over the direction of the mountain anyone looking that way would be blinded by the sun, even if they could distinguish Naruto while he was working. Did he even know how tactical that was? He needed to make sure Naruto cultivated that before he lost it. This kid might be able to write a book on tactics when he got older. Iruka shook that thought off for later. He wasn't letting this one go. Alright Naruto, now it's really simple. All you have to do is gather your chakra throughout your entire body and exert it outwardly in a single layer burst. You should get a feeling of everything around you. Closer objects should give a stronger presence than things further away. Got it? Naruto nodded. I've got it, Iruka-sensei. He placed his hands in the ram seal. When Iruka gave him a questioning look, Naruto blushed out of embarrassment. I kind of don't know how to focus my chakra without making hand seals yet. Iruka shook his head. That's another thing you need to work on, Naruto, but it's alright for now. Naruto did as he was instructed and projected his chakra outwards in a quick burst. He looked at Iruka after doing so and blinked blankly. So how was that? Iruka scratched his head. I don't know, you have to tell me. Did you feel anything? Naruto shrugged. How am I supposed to know? Can you tell me what it feels like when done right? Iruka took a moment to think. I'll be right back. Just yell for me when you're ready to do the jutsu again, I'll hear you and come running. Just see if you can feel which way I'm coming from. That should work. With that, Iruka disappeared from sight, leaving Naruto to build his chakra again. Naruto stood for a moment before getting an amount he thought was good before shouting at the top of his lungs, "All right, Iruka-sensei. I'm ready." He waited a second before letting the pulse go. He felt something moving at 7 o'clock and turned in the corresponding direction. Got you, Iruka-sensei. A few seconds later Iruka made it right next to Naruto. You felt me coming from all that way. He sounded surprised. That was from 400 meters away. That's a quarter of a mile. He tried to hide his shock under a guise of indifference. That's pretty good for just having gotten the jutsu down, but you need to get better at sensing things and reacting before they get close. If someone was throwing something at you, being able to sense it wouldn't do any good if you still can't dodge it. You'll get better the more you try it. Naruto had been expecting something big and flashy, but this was cool to him as well. No one's ever going to sneak up on me again with this, Iruka-sensei. I'll get better with this jutsu than you are, and then I'll rename it to something cooler, Datbeo. Iruka curled over by a tree with a raincloud over his head. Why does everyone say the name of the jutsu isn't cool? I think I came up with a great name for it. Naruto ignored his thoughts on his jutsu and kept talking. I mean, it explains what it is and all, but you've got to come up with something that just screams. Something like, or, you know. Iruka coughed and got over his momentary lapse in self-esteem. Well, that's it, Naruto. That's all I've got for you. Naruto smiled up at the man. Thanks for everything, Iruka-sensei. I promise I'll make you proud. I know you will, Naruto. Iruka said, but remember the most important weapon a shinobi could ever have. A kunai, Naruto guessed. No, a log for kawarimi. Well yes, but that's a lesson a lot of ninja don't know until much later, so good for you. Naruto grinned widely at the compliment while Iruka continued, I'm talking about your mind. He accentuated by tapping his temple. Your mind is the most dangerous weapon that an enemy can encounter, especially your mind. Because I'm not really sure what goes through it 90% of the time, and anything you can't anticipate is always scary. Naruto nodded. Right, my mind is scary. Got it. Iruka palmed his face and dragged it down. Just don't be afraid of learning things, Naruto. Trust me, the smarter you are, the tougher you are to beat. Just look at Hokage-sama. They call him the professor because of all of his amassed knowledge. The better understanding of things you have, the stronger you can be. Naruto laughed. Well, then I'll just have to get smarter than the old man too. Thanks a lot, Iruka-sensei. I'll see you later. Naruto turned and took off away from the academy. I'm going to get some ramen. Wait until I tell everyone I passed. Iruka watched Naruto leave with a smile on his face. Konoha wasn't built in a day, I suppose. Hey, you know, I think he actually listened to me more today than any other time in the last 6 years. XXX. Hiruzen was watching Iruka and Naruto's impromptu session from his crystal ball. Good work, Iruka. It seems that you're one of the most willing shinobi out there when it comes to passing the torch to the next generation. The old man let out a fond laugh. If only we had more shinobi like you in our ranks. It had only been 1 day since Naruto had learned Chakura Henkute no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu, and he had barely stopped using it for the entire day before. Once he ate and bragged about his graduation to Tyuki and Ayame at Ichiraku Ramen, he went straight home and pretty much sat on his roof for hours just sending out pulse after pulse, scouting for anything he could sense. It was unarguably the stillest Naruto had ever sat for the longest period of time. Why didn't more people take the time to learn this jutsu from Iruka-sensei? As a matter of fact, why not teach it in the academy? It was so cool. Anyway, after doing that for a few hours of mindless entertainment, funny though, Iruka said it was wasteful on chakra. He didn't feel like he had been doing anything, but that was a whole different matter. After he was done playing with his new jutsu, he headed inside. He still had a week to wait out before he was to be at orientation, and he had nothing to do. He promised he wouldn't pull any more pranks, and he wasn't going to be able to top painting the Hokage monument anyway. He had absolutely nothing to do that night. There was no need to go to bed early or anything. He didn't have to be anywhere the next morning for an entire week, but he still didn't have a thing to do for that period of time. You need to get all of the academy katas down and finish learning the taijutsu. Iruka told him he needed to finish learning the taijutsu. Naruto always assumed he was passable in taijutsu because he was. It was the only thing he decisively passed no matter what in the academy, because it didn't require him to learn anything or pay too much attention. All the attention he paid was in the beginning when they went over the most simple basics provided, how to punch and kick. That was it. He knew nothing else formal about it. Not how to dodge and parry, not even how to properly block. He never even really got reprimanded in taijutsu class, because more often than not when they would spar he would win. He couldn't beat kids like Kiba or that asshole Sasuke, but pretty much everyone else he was able to at the very least hang tough against, because he launched an assault right when the fight would start. Even when he got hit he would just work on through it, counting on the fact that he could take more punches than his opponents. His style was no style. He was a hard-nosed brawler, and it had suited him fine to this point. But he promised that he would try, and he didn't have anything to do, and it was too late to go out and run amok. What he forgot, however, was that he had never bothered to even keep his stuff together from the academy. When he got homework or some other handout that he didn't do right there on the spot, it usually got forgotten among some clutter, and he hadn't touched anything on taijutsu in forever. Hence the rest of his night awake was spent with him digging all over the apartment for his stuff on academy taijutsu. When he had woken up the next morning, 2 hours were spent with him retrieving the rest of his scrolls on taijutsu, and by the time he had finished that and had some breakfast, he was too bored to just sit in his apartment or read them. Deciding to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, he left the house in search of somewhere interesting that could help him hold his attention long enough to get to the practical application of the academy taijutsu, because after learning basic stance and punches and kicks, Iruka went into lecture mode for about a month after that, killing Naruto's buzz, so to speak, and letting his attention on the matter drop. At least this time I can skip all of the boring stuff and just learn the cool moves in the scroll, Naruto thought to himself as he walked through the village. He held the scroll in his hand, looking at it as he navigated the village streets on autopilot. He didn't really need to keep his eyes ahead of him. People usually always gave him a wide berth when he was going anywhere, something he didn't really understand, but that was the way it had been for as long as he could remember. That was okay. All he had to do was show them how awesome he was, and then everything would change, which was going to happen any day now that he was finally a ninja. Kids would be asking him for autographs. He'd hear people reference his greatness even in conversations where his name wasn't even in the topic. Appraising eyes would be on him every time he went into public. Yep, he couldn't wait. I can't wait to show everyone how much I kick. I've got to go learn this taijutsu so I can get started. With a huge grin on his face, Naruto sped off towards the verdant forests of Konoha to find somewhere to get to work. XXX. Naruto was incredibly disappointed when he finally reached his spot in the forest he had chosen to train at. The Academy Taijutsu scroll only had a few basics: how to throw textbook punches, kicks, how to block to minimize damage, how to notice your opponent telegraphing an attack, just those basics. The most advanced thing in the scroll he found was how to trap a limb, and that was where that little hint of instruction stopped with the words, "From here utilize advanced grappling knowledge." When the hell had they gone over that? And why didn't he have a scroll on it? Naruto growled and stood up to go through the motions that were actually provided in instruction on the scroll, as he really didn't know those things actually except for the punches and kicks. Blocking was harder to get seeing as he needed a training partner. And then he proceeded to slam his head off of a tree as he realized that he had a built-in training partner from the jutsu he had learned from the Scroll of Seals. With a clone made via Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto had him play living dummy as he directed the clone to hold its hands out and catch his punches and kicks so that Naruto didn't have to smash them up on a tree. It would always dispel after blocking a few, but he could always bring out another one no matter how irksome it was. This went on for 30 minutes before Naruto decided to drill his defense. Making a clone that was grinning at the potential prospect brought along by his order, which was to punch and kick the original Naruto while he tried blocking, parrying, and eventually catching the punches in his grasp, he set himself in his basic stance and prepared for practicing his blocking, which didn't really work out too well for him right off the bat. Naruto's clone immediately took to pummeling his creator, for his orders, not even letting Naruto reset himself to try again, and then it basically devolved into Naruto rolling around and brawling with himself on the forest floor. "Ow, you bit me," the original Naruto shouted before dispelling his unruly clone with a hard smash over the head. "Stupid troublemaking Kage Bunshin." Naruto stood back up and smashed his fist against a tree, forcing the leaves to shake violently. A kunai then deposited itself right above where his hand was against the tree, forcing Naruto to turn around and let out a pulse to determine his attacker's exact location. Naruto turned in the exact direction he felt a living presence with a serious look. "Who's there? You might as well come out, I can find you no matter what." Naruto sounded pretty tough, but that kunai came close to pinning him to a tree and the other night while playing with his new jutsu he had gotten used to sensing distance. He sensed the person that did that from about 500 feet away. That was scary aim even though they missed, and he hoped that they had missed on purpose. After a few seconds a brown-eyed girl with brown hair put up into buns came out, looking over Naruto warily, the favor being returned right back to her. She had on a sleeveless pink Chinese top and dark green pants. The thing Naruto noted was that she had on her own headband signifying her as a ninja of the village, and he had left his at home, only planning to wear it once orientation took place. Naruto pulled at the kunai she had thrown into the tree trunk out with quite a bit of effort as he kept his eyes on her. How hard did she throw this thing? Finally he managed to pull the kunai out and held it out in front of him suspiciously. "Why did you throw that at me?" he finally asked. The girl spoke up with conviction in her voice. "For the last 45 minutes all I hear from my spot training in the forest is a lot of yelling and shouting, and then a bunch of cursing, and finally someone starts sounding like they're going to tear the forest apart. Let's just say I don't like leaving things unsolved and leave it at that. Now who are you?" Naruto still didn't really drop his guard. Mizuki wasn't supposed to try and kill him either, and that still happened. "Uzumaki Naruto. Future Hokage, Dadbeo. You have to be a ninja first before you can try being Hokage, kid." Naruto got a tick mark on his head from how she was talking to him. Naruto snapped at her. "I am a ninja. I'm no different than you." The girl didn't verbally respond, she simply audibly tapped the metal of her headband. "You need one of these to distinguish yourself as a ninja of this village. So where's yours? Damn it, so most of this could have been avoided if he had just worn the headband. He wasn't leaving that thing home ever again. I didn't bring it. I didn't know I would need to actually identify myself today. I don't even have orientation until next week." The girl's distrustful look switched over to one of amusement as her seemingly hostile posture straightened up. She walked over to Naruto and ruffled his hair. "Ah, you're just a baby rookie, huh?" She grinned at him as he shook her hand off of his head. "Oi," Naruto replied crossly, "you're treating me like a 5-year-old. I'm a legal adult now, a fully fledged ninja." "Of course you are." The girl pinched Naruto's cheek, taking pride in the twitching eyebrow signifying his ire at the current predicament. Such a big tough ninja that hasn't even put his headband on yet or even gone on a mission. "So precious." Naruto's voice came out distorted due to the girl's grabbing of his cheek. "You know you're not any older than me, so you can't be that much farther advanced. She raised an eyebrow. I've been a genin for a little over a year. That's an eternity compared to a newbie like you. I'd squash you if we were ever to fight. Oh yeah, Naruto felt insulted. Who did this girl think she was? Why did everyone think they could just walk all over him all of the time? Even when people don't know him at all, it still happened. How about you put your money where your mouth is? The girl once again looked sufficiently amused by his statement. All right then. You're lucky that my team broke off for the day so that we could all train on our own, so now I've got some time to play with you. Follow me. She finished by taking her kunai back out of Naruto's grasp. Naruto flexed his fingers in anticipation as he followed this new girl into a clearing to fight. This was his first legitimate fight against a ninja since Mizuki, and he was going to make her eat her words. The girl stood out in front of him with a confident look on her face. I'll go easy on you and wrap this up in 3 minutes, Naruto-chan. She taunted. Naruto grit his teeth. She was seriously messing with him now. Oh yeah. I don't know who you are, so I know damn well that you don't know me. I'll tell you this though, don't underestimate me. Naruto broke out in a rush right at the kunoichi, planning to just knock her block off and be done here so he could be productive again. The girl's jaw almost dropped at how straightforward this guy was. The space between them was 30 yards that he had to cover before he could even think of taking a swing at her, and he wasn't even that fast. Hell, one of her teammates hopping towards her on one leg would probably be faster than this kid was moving. She had to refrain from shaking her head as she pulled out a set of shuriken. She really didn't want to hurt this kid. Naruto ended up falling onto his face as sharp pains hit him in multiple places on his body. Naruto rolled over and looked at his legs to see multiple shuriken sticking out the front of them going down. He looked up in surprise at his female opponent, who had a displeased look on her face. If that's all you've got, then go home. I could have killed you right there and been done with it if this were an actual battle. Naruto's eyes widened. She was right. He barely even saw anything coming at him and she hit him flush. Ignoring this, Naruto pulled the shuriken out of his legs and stood back up. She hadn't hit him anywhere vital or even anywhere important. So she was using weapons, was she? Naruto reached into his own supply pouch and let off a barrage of shuriken at the girl, who simply smirked and threw more of her own, hitting each of Naruto's and knocking them out of the air. She was looking too smug for him to just quit and leave. Not without hitting her once, not without just giving her one good one to prove he wasn't pathetic. Naruto lifted his hands and made a cross seal with his fingers. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. The young girl's eyes widened as she saw one Naruto multiply into 12. She was so surprised she almost missed his shout of, "Go!" That spurred all of them into action. The sight of so many Narutos charging in at her and the realization that they weren't regular Bunshin and were real almost made her run away, but she got herself under control and focused. It didn't matter if there were 12 of him, 12 times 0 was still 0. Naruto planned on giving her the old Mizuki special, but he figured she was a genin and Mizuki was an elite, sending that many would be complete overkill, so 12 was enough. He thought that right until a bow staff appeared in her hands in a puff of smoke and she began decimating his clones. Seeing a girl his age masterfully handle a 6-foot-long staff so effectively, his clones weren't even getting close enough to mount an offense, was disheartening. What did he have? What? Was he going to just flood the field with clones like against Mizuki and beat her to a bloody pulp because she had skill that he didn't have? He didn't even think that Tem Sasuke could beat this girl. Who are you? Naruto asked once she finished mowing his Kage Bunshin down. The girl set the head of her staff on the ground in her hand and wiped her brow. It took you long enough to ask, how rude. My name is Tenten. So are we done? Naruto frowned. What did he have other than the Kage Bunshin? That was his trump card, his best technique, the strongest thing he had. He could have kept making them for as long as he wanted, but she would have just kept killing them off, and he didn't like his own chances of getting close to her the way his replicas had been put out of commission. No, A win was a win and he would be damned if he was just going to lay down and let this girl beat him without at least trying to triumph. Naruto channeled his chakra and formed his hand seal again, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. Okay, seeing a rookie that hadn't even had a day on the job make solid clones was an eye-opener for Tenten, but this was ridiculous. She was surrounded on all sides by Naruto's clones that were giving her a wide berth to avoid the staff, but it was only a matter of time before he sent them in. She knew this, it was only logical. Tenten quickly pulled out 2 scrolls and set them on the ground while making a short set of hand seals. Go! Naruto shouted, ordering his Kage Bunshin to put Tenten down hard. Sushoryu, twin rising dragons. Tenten's scrolls unraveled upwards in a swirling pattern of smoke as she jumped between them and began unsealing weapons from the scrolls surrounding her. She then proceeded to mercilessly bombard Naruto's horde of copies with every single weapon she had amassed inside of her scrolls. Not just the standard fare of kunai and shuriken, Tenten pelted the poor clones with Fuma shuriken, a mace, sickles, senbon, katanas. She even threw out a few broadswords, and everything she threw hit. Nothing she flung at the Kage Bunshin missed its mark. All of them forgot about attacking and simply focused on surviving, but there was nowhere to go. They were in the middle of a clearing, the closest cover was 60 yards away and Tenten wasn't taking prisoners. In a matter of moments Tenten had cleared the field of every single image of Naruto she had been aiming at. She landed back on the ground and her scrolls went slack as the field was covered in the leftover smoke from all of the clones. Tenten grimaced at her handiwork. She knew she hadn't missed a single one, they were far too slow for her to miss on her worst day. She looked around for the real Naruto, she hoped she hadn't injured him too badly with all of that, she might have gone a little overboard. Kid, are you still alive? Say something. She began walking and looking about the field that was hazy from all of the Kage Bunshin smoke that was steadily dispersing. The area finally cleared up and Tenten couldn't see Naruto anywhere, there was no blood or anything either, signifying if he ran away or not. A poof sound directed her attention behind her where all she saw upon turning was a flash of yellow and orange before a fist closed in on her face. Dynamic entry. A green blur came from out of nowhere and plowed a flying kick into the side of Naruto's face, sending him flying off from his surprise attack on Tenten and sending him sliding through the amassed weapons from Tenten's jutsu. The blur turned out to be a boy their age in a green bodysuit, orange leg warmers, bandaged hands, and a red headband around his waist as a belt. He had a black bowl-cut hairstyle and large eyebrows over round black eyes. He stood protectively in front of Tenten in a fighting stance. I cannot allow you to harm my teammate. Such an underhanded attack on my youthful female comrade. Lee, Tenten said questioningly as she saw Naruto struggling and failing to pick himself up off of the ground. Her mood turned from confusion to annoyance. Lee, that was what he was supposed to do. We were sparring, he was supposed to try and hit me. The boy now identified as Lee stood up out of his stance and looked at Tenten in a puzzled manner before his face turned apologetic. I am sorry Tenten. I simply saw him appear and attack you from behind and I just acted. I apologize. Tenten shook her head. Whatever. I'm not the one you need to apologize to. I'm not the one that got blindsided and knocked senseless. She turned her head towards Naruto who had finally pulled himself into a sitting position. Naruto sat on the ground rubbing his face and clearing the mass amounts of weapons around him so that he didn't get cut or stabbed by anything. What the hell hit him? 1 second he was so close to nailing that Tenten chick right on the chin he could see the fear in her eyes and then he was over here 40 feet away and feeling like chewing would be a pipe dream in the near future. He stopped thinking when he saw the object of his last attack kneel down in front of him with an apologetic look on her face. I'm sorry about that. My hot-headed teammate jumped the shark and interrupted the fight. Naruto looked at her, eyes exuding remorse for his appearance. He dabbed at his face with his hand and pulled it away. When he was hit his face must have dragged across the ground quite a bit from the blood he saw when he touched it. He must have cut it up on any of Tenten's myriad of weaponry. Are you alright? A smirk crossed Naruto's face suddenly. I told you I'd last more than 3 minutes. Naruto then noticed how concerned she sounded and gave her a reassuring grin. Sure, I'll be fine. This will all heal up by tomorrow, he said loudly before clutching his jaw. He had opened it too far to talk. He looked over and saw a strange guy in green. Ah, he must have been the douche that hit him. He probably fractured his jaw. I am terribly sorry for kicking you, the green guy said frantically. It's just I was not aware that it was a spar. I thought you were trying to harm my teammate and I just jumped right in, and… Lee. Tenten cut him off from speaking any further. I think he gets it. You're sorry. Lee stopped moving around and spazzing out. Yes, Tenten is correct. I apologize for harming you. The boy bowed to him before straightening out and giving him a smile. I am Konoha's beautiful green beast, Rock Lee. Did his teeth just sparkle? Naruto figured he must have been concussed or something and shook it off. Well then, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the next Hokage, Dadbeo. What a youthful goal. Lee shouted to the skies. I myself have high dreams, as does our dear Tenten. I wish to be a world-famous ninja known only for my taijutsu, and Tenten wishes to be a ninja on par both strength and reputation-wise with Tsunade. Naruto just nodded once he heard Tenten's dream. He had no idea who that was. He rubbed his jaw again once Lee's goal registered with him. Well, you're off to a good start, both of you actually. Naruto looked at the weapons surrounding him. You didn't miss once. Tenten smiled at him before it fell. Wait, I missed you. Naruto shook his head. No, you never threw anything at me. You just destroyed all of my clones. After you cut down a few, I hid in the smoke and hanged into one of the weapons that you threw. That was really scary though. Tenten held out a hand and helped Naruto to his feet. You almost got me. If Lee hadn't kicked you, I would probably be face up looking at the clouds right now wondering what happened. Naruto grinned at her widely. Henge no Jutsu, transformation jutsu, is super useful. I was never going to get close enough to do anything to you the way you were fighting. Rubbing the back of her head sheepishly, she laughed a little. What can I say? I like weapons. She then let out a sigh. But now I have to pick up and reseal all of these. Lee gave her a rigid salute. I will help you retrieve all of your ninja tools, Tenten. With that he ran off around the entire clearing, picking up the weaponry. Naruto was shocked at his speed and then turned to Tenten. So that's why it looked so easy for you to hit me if he's your teammate. That guy is insane fast. You have no idea. Tenten agreed, but you weren't bad. Yes, I was. Naruto looked down. You said it yourself that you could have killed me right at the start. And even then the only way I could even get close was with that trick. Well duh, Tenten said with a roll of her eyes. That's what a shinobi is supposed to do. Catch their opponent off guard and finish them off. It's not like you had any weapon to get near me with anyway. You had to fight like that or you would have never gotten near me. Naruto's face lit up at that. Actually, I did have a weapon. A weapon more dangerous than any of yours. Tenten looked at him anticipating his answer. My mind. Tenten blinked at him before bursting into laughter, forcing her to double over and hold herself up on her knees. Your mind. Okay then, whatever you say. She finished with a giggle. Yosh. Lee deposited all of Tenten's weapons in a neat pile by her 2 scrolls and saluted her. Tenten, Guy-sensei sent me here to retrieve you so that we could take a mission. You should hurry and get back to our training ground. Lee turned his attention to Naruto. It was nice to meet you, Naruto-san. I hope I will see you around the village one day. With that, Lee ran out of the clearing away from Naruto and Tenten. Tenten sighed and walked over to her scrolls, quickly sealing her tools back inside of them. Whoa, she looked at Naruto oddly, getting him to continue. That was cool. How did you do that? Tenten almost face-faulted. That was just me sealing my weapons back up. I learned how to do that in the academy, didn't you? Naruto looked away sheepishly and mumbled. What was that? She asked him. I said I was the dead last. He shouted before going silent, expecting her to start making fun of him, laugh at him, or just start treating him like everyone else did, ignoring him. Tenten gave him a warm smile. But you graduated, didn't you? Graduating last is better than not graduating at all, right? She pocketed her scrolls and patted him on the shoulder. You know, Lee was the dead last of our class last year too. Naruto looked up at her with bulging eyes. Yep. He can't do any ninjutsu and barely passed, and now look at him. I would rather have him on my side than any of those others from our year. So don't worry about it. Naruto couldn't believe it. That guy had been the Dobi too. How did he get so good? He was so fast, I don't think anyone in my class could even touch him. Tenten put up one finger. He trained very hard. She then turned to leave the field. See you around, Naruto. If you ever want a rematch, you can usually find me here on days where my team doesn't meet. Naruto watched her leave and waved at her, getting a wave back. He looked at the field he had just used to more or less get his kicked, so that's how strong a genin is after 1 year of being a ninja. His face formed a small grin. Well, it looks like I'm just going to have to get better than that, won't I? XXX. After getting bored with the monotony of just going through taijutsu katas for hours, Naruto headed back into town. The cuts he had suffered from his little scuffle were steadily healing, but he still had to head home to grab some bandages, making him look like he had lost a fight. He basically had, but he still didn't like looking like he did in public. He simply kept to himself and wandered about, thinking on what he had done today. Tenten kicked all those Kage Bunshin were useless when it came to getting close to her. She was really good with those weapons. I almost got her though, after I did that trick with Henge. Huh, so that's what Iruka-sensei meant by my brain is my most dangerous weapon. Naruto's wandering had taken him from the business and residential districts of Konoha he normally found himself frequenting and brought him over to the side of the village that was more focused on military matters. He hadn't been here much because there was never really any need to do anything except go and hang out with the Sandaime Hokage for a bit. That actually didn't sound like a half-bad idea, come to think of it. With a new course of action set in his mind, Naruto headed towards the Hokage Tower where once he arrived, the guards gave him a cautious look. He got that look more often than not, but in this case he figured they had some reason to look at him like that. He had just broken in 2 days ago and stolen a scroll full of village secrets. As he headed towards the office he greeted the pretty secretary that let him go inside, where he found the old Kage sitting at his desk with a lit pipe in hand. You shouldn't smoke that stuff, Sarutobi Gigi. You're already old enough, don't let the smoke kill you faster. The old man chuckled at Naruto and put his pipe out for the boy's benefit. Naruto-kun. What can I do for you today? He then got a good look at his face. What on earth happened to you? Naruto grinned awkwardly. I kind of got into a fight with an older genin a little while ago. The old man frowned disapprovingly. You shouldn't be picking fights with your comrades, Naruto-kun. You should know better than that. I'm disappointed. Naruto looked down ashamedly. He didn't even bother telling him that Tenten more or less started it, as he didn't think that would go over so well as an excuse even if he had. I'm sorry, Gigi. I learned a lesson though. She kind of handed me for most of it. Hiruzen's mood improved and he let out another aged chuckle. Well, you are just a fresh genin, Naruto. She's been at this for at least a year if she's older than you from the way you sound. A year of hard training and field experience while you were still in the academy makes her a better shinobi just out of principle. About the academy, Naruto figured he might as well ask while it was fresh on his brain before he forgot. I was going over some stuff about the academy taijutsu. All it had was the basic stuff, and the only thing it said on anything else was something I didn't even had. I checked later and I couldn't find it. Something about advanced grappling knowledge, but I don't have anything on that. The old man stood up and rested his hand on Naruto's shoulder as he led him out of his office. I'll show you this now since you're a shinobi now, Naruto-kun, come with me. The Sandaime Hokage led Naruto out to the roof of the tower where he proceeded to use Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker jutsu, to take them to a building at the top of the Hokage monument. Naruto looked at Sarutobi, who started walking ahead of Naruto towards the building. Can you teach me how to do that, Gigi? Naruto asked excitedly. Maybe you can teach it to yourself, Naruto-kun. The Hokage motioned for Naruto to catch up with him. After the boy caught up, he proceeded to open a massive set of double doors. Behind the set of doors lay a massive room with row after row of books and scrolls. Where are we, Sarutobi Gigi? Naruto wondered. He had never been anywhere near this place before. When he went to the top of the Hokage monument, all he ever did was go to look off over the edge at the village. Hiruzen smiled. This is the Konoha Archive Library. Located here is tons of information on things like village history, ninja both past and current, and all sorts of other things. Naruto deflated. Ah, I thought this was going to be cool. All this place has are a bunch of musty books and scrolls. Hiruzen shrugged. Oh, I was going to say that I thought a few ninja techniques were here as well, but if you aren't interested, he baited Naruto, and he didn't let him down. Hold on. Naruto stopped Hiruzen. You say that there are all kinds of stuff here like jutsu too, right? There are a few if you actually comb through and look. Hiruzen knew he had him now. Just the prospect at learning a new jutsu had Naruto ready to go. Well then, let's get going then. Naruto yelled before a harsh shush sounded out from the man seated at the front desk. A middle-aged man with close-cut black hair and a small, high, ponytail, a goatee, glasses, and a long white jacket, open to show a dark orange shirt and black pants. The man sighed. You can't just yell in the middle of this place, you know. This is a facility for quiet study. Please don't disrupt the shinobi here to work. Naruto blushed and rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, Oji-san. It won't happen again. Hiruzen chuckled and patted Naruto on the head. Naruto, this is Ikeda Atsuto. He is the head of Konoha's cryptanalysis squad. Wow, Naruto said as he looked at the average-looking man. You must be a really important guy then, huh? I'm just a basic librarian when I'm not needed to work. The man smiled slightly. Hey, a bookworm's good for something in a hidden village after all. Now what can I do for you, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen led Naruto closer to his desk. Well, Uzumaki, Naruto-kun here just graduated and he would like to go through your library to see if he could find something on advanced grappling techniques to bolster his academy taijutsu. And some cool jutsu. Naruto cut in loudly before covering his mouth suddenly. Sorry, I forgot. Atsuto waved it off. It's alright, but I'm kind of iffy on exactly where the volumes on taijutsu are. He looked at Naruto appraising ly. He is a shinobi, isn't he? Yes, he is a recent graduate. Hiruzen assured him. I most certainly wouldn't have brought him if he weren't. He simply neglected to wear his headband today. Isn't that right, Naruto-kun? Naruto was sure there was a lesson in that comment somewhere. It was the second time today that he almost got himself into trouble for not wearing that thing. He just wanted to keep it looking good for orientation. If he had worn it, he would have gotten it all scuffed in his little scrap with Tenten, or it would have gotten all sweaty, or he could have lost it. He was trying to be responsible. Yes, Gigi, Naruto said as if he had just been lightly scolded. Atsuto nodded. All right then, next time make sure you wear it. Only shinobi of Konoha or those with express permission from the Hokage can come in here and examine our archives. Now let me get someone to help you. Shiho, he shouted out into the mostly still library, getting Naruto and Hiruzen to sweat drop at the hypocrisy. A surprised yelp came before some swift rummaging noises. Seconds later, a girl with blonde hair darker than Naruto's tied back in a ponytail with a red hairband and glasses that looked like swirls were in them where her eyes should have gone on her face came out and stood in front of Atsuto's desk. Her hair had occasional strands sticking up, making her look slightly disheveled. She had on a long dark red dress and a long white coat like Atsuto, only she held her coat together with a black headband worn like a backwards sash around her waist. Yes, sensei. What can I do for you? Shiho said once she had gotten to the front. Atsuto smiled at the girl and turned to Naruto. This is my genin apprentice Shiho. If you'd like, I'm certain she'd help you find anything it is that you are looking for here. Shiho, go ahead and say hello to the Hokage and meet Uzumaki Naruto. The girl turned around and saw Naruto, who gave her a tentative wave. The girl returned it with a smile. Hello Hokage-sama, and hello Uzumaki-kun. I'd be happy to help out. All I was doing before this was just putting back some of the books those other lazy ninja didn't bother with. Speaking of which, did you finish that? Atsuto said with a look that had a dangerous gleam in his eye. Shiho recoiled slightly. I was almost done, but then you called me to meet Uzumaki-kun. Sorry sensei. The man laughed. It's alright Shiho, as long as it gets done before you head home for the day. Now if you would, please help Naruto here get situated. Here's inside. Well, I have to get back to the office and complete my work. Please take good care of Naruto-kun here if you could, Shiho-chan. With that, the old man bade everyone farewell and returned to the Hokage Tower. Atsuto waved for the two youngsters to leave him to his busy work. Now both of you go on and show Naruto what the library has for a young ninja like him. You can finish your work later, Shiho. Shiho nodded and motioned for Naruto to follow her into the archives. Come with me please. After they started walking for a bit, Shiho started talking. So this is your first time here? Naruto laughed and placed his hands behind his head. Yeah, I just graduated the other day and Gigi brought me here so I could figure out something that I couldn't find on taijutsu from the academy stuff. Well, the academy taijutsu is more of something that was used as a building block to help keep students in shape and give them a base in learning more advanced styles later. Shiho replied succinctly as they kept walking. Yeah, Naruto said, squinting. Iruka-sensei said that too. Shiho nodded and smiled. Well, you graduated. That's good for you. I graduated last year, but I wasn't able to actually become a ninja due to, well, related circumstances. I shouldn't say. Naruto looked at her sorrowfully. Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry. I'm probably making you feel bad with all of this, aren't I? Shiho waved off his concern. Oh no, don't worry about it. Because of sensei, I'm still technically an active shinobi and I still do missions from time to time, but I'm here more often than not. It actually might have been the best thing to happen to me. Atsuto-sensei found me after it happened and extended an invitation to be his apprentice in the cryptanalysis squad. I actually like doing that more than I would have liked being a shinobi. Fighting never really was my strong suit in the academy. I wasn't too good at the practical parts. If I hit you, it would probably feel like a paper bag brushed against your face. She said with a slight laugh as she threw a fake punch at Naruto that brushed against his cheek jokingly. Naruto let out a laugh himself. Hey, you never know. I'm not too good myself. I just got a bit of a beatdown today myself, but it's going to be alright. A Hokage never lets a little setback stop him. Shiho liked this Naruto kid. There weren't too many shinobi around her age heading to the library for her to talk to, and he didn't treat her like a useless nerd so far. It didn't seem to bother him that she wasn't a real ninja at all. You want to be Hokage Uzumaki-kun? Naruto grinned at her. You'd better believe it, Shiho-chan. I'm going to be the best Hokage there ever was. You'll see. Then when you're the head of this department, we can run this village, Dadbeo. Both of them turned down an aisle as directed by Shiho. That sounds good, just make sure you give me a raise, okay? She said as she trailed her finger along the edges of the books to find her place. Okay, here's a book on basics of shinobi combat. She said as she placed it in his hands. It's a good read and it's pretty helpful. Naruto looked at the book. Essential knowledge on shinobi tactics, styles, and skills. Ah, Shiho-chan, I just wanted the taijutsu scroll on the grappling stuff or some cool looking style so I could see if I could learn it before orientation so that I have more cool moves to show off. Naruto whined. Why are you making me read this? Shiho rolled her eyes. Because all of that stuff you want is all well and good, but if you don't know how or when to use it, then it's not going to help, is it? She questioned. If you did end up getting a new style from out of here and then somehow learned it well enough to use it by orientation, you still wouldn't have any knowledge on what to do with it. Like if you wanted to engage from 100 feet away, how would you get there? Run right at them and hope they stand still and wait for you. Naruto blushed as he realized that little plan of action didn't exactly work out today against Tenten. Okay, he said begrudgingly, I'll read this then, I promise. He gave a defeated sigh as Shiho gave him a victorious smile and the sign before taking him to a table to sit and read at. Shiho seated him and patted him on the back. Okay, Uzumaki-kun. Get started reading this and I'll see if I can find the stuff on taijutsu that you want. She looked back towards the archives and slumped her shoulders. I really wish there was someone else working today other than me and Sensei though, help would be nice. You need help. Naruto vacantly made the seal for his strongest jutsu after cracking the book open with a bored look. I can do that. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke surrounded Naruto and Shiho before revealing a dozen Narutos all looking around blankly. There you go, help Shiho-chan find what she's looking for. I'll just stay here and read. He said distastefully. The clones looked at each other before shrugging. Better to do this than to read, poor boss. The clones thought before one turned to Shiho. Okay, Shiho-chan, where do we start? Shiho stared at them in disbelief before poking the one closest to her. They're all real. That move must be so complex. What is he doing here then? He must be a genius or something. The clones all blushed in embarrassment. Actually, we were the dead last this year, but that doesn't mean anything. Shiho nodded. Not if this jutsu you have here has anything to say about it. Now come on, let's go find the real Uzumaki-kun his scrolls. Naruto simply read along while his clones and Shiho went searching through the place for what he asked for. He promised her he would read this and she was a nice enough girl. He didn't want to upset his new friend right after meeting her just because he was too much of a blockhead to try and crack a book for once. A ninja's style is an approach to combat that makes use of that ninja's strengths and talents. It then proceeded to give off a list of different catalogued styles and the direct page number to skip to, something Naruto was thankful for as he didn't have to read the whole thing if he found something he liked. Long range, mid-range, and close-range styles. Remembering how Tenten fought, he flipped to the section on long range. Marksman, that sounds like her all right. Marksman, a style more suited for support than for direct attack. Is most useful in events of surprise attack to take down multiple foes before they can react, weakening an enemy's defenses, and diverting their attention away from the main attack. A marksman's best bet in a fight is to stay at a distance from an opponent to keep out of the enemy's range and safely bombard them with accurate attacks. Good reflexes and impeccable hand-eye coordination are the hallmark of a good marksman. Marksmen are usually weak against wind-type ninjutsu as their weapons must fly through the air to reach the target. Naruto sighed, man, if only I was a wind type, or even knew how to be one. Then Tenten would have been done for. He laughed to himself at the thought of a chibi Tenten throwing stuff at him and Naruto just lifting one hand and blowing it away like paper. He kept reading through styles such as puppeteering, which sounded cool but they were all from Sunagaku, and Naruto couldn't even find that place on an unlabeled map, let alone actually know someone from there, so no dice whatsoever there. He read about Sensor Ninja, a type of ninja able to detect the presence of others through their chakra. He was pretty new at that as he couldn't really use Chakura Henkute no Jutsu, chakra echolocation jutsu, far enough for it to be effective enough to call him a proper sensor yet. He eventually lost himself in the book, jumping around and reading parts that he found cool enough to pay attention to, for the better part of an hour. Uzumaki-kun. Shiho ran back to his table with a scroll in hand. I found the scrolls you were looking for. She placed 3 scrolls on the table. This is what me and your clones worked out as what you might like to use. Naruto looked up from his book. Oh, I know. Shiho looked at him strangely. How would you know? You were here the whole time, why would you possibly know what I had done with your clones? That thought caused Naruto to pause. Why did he know? He remembered doing stuff with Shiho before climbing the bookcase to grab the scrolls at the top, it almost tipping over and Shiho screaming causing him to lose his balance and fall. That was what jumped into his head about 2 minutes ago. Shiho had a thought, I'll be right back Uzumaki-kun. While Shiho left to head back into the archives, Naruto looked over what she had left. 3 scrolls, Yawa Ashi, Soft Foot, Umite, Long Blade Hand, and Nibaken, Sticky Fist. Yawa Ashi, Soft Foot, was out almost immediately when Naruto read it. Not only did the name turn him off as it made him sound like a ballerina, it didn't seem like his kind of style. It revolved around using your legs for feints and neglecting the use of your hands to deal damage in exchange for kicks. The hands were never used, even when it came to blocking. Head movement and simply being elusive were the touted defenses of the style. It required good coordination and fast feet. Naruto didn't even know how to train to get fast feet and he tripped on his own feet walking down the street from time to time. He wasn't too coordinated. Umite, Long Blade Hand, was a cool concept, but the practice turned Naruto off from learning it. It required you to build up the hardness of the tips of your fingers and the knife edge of your hand for powerful chops and straight hand thrusts that could be shoved right through an opponent. It sounded cool in practice, but the training to get your hands that strong in the first place however was to repeatedly break your fingertips and pinky side of your hand enough times while learning the strikes that the bones would calcify and harden over time to increase hardness. The only good thing about that style to Naruto was that he would have to drink more milk. The last style hooked him in. Nibaken, Sticky Fist, went right along with what he had caught notice of in the Academy Taijutsu text of advanced grappling. It basically compounded on what to do after you had trapped a limb on your opponent. After grabbing an enemy's arm or leg you would either pull them in and deliver shockingly powerful punches, forearm and elbow strikes, knees, shoulder shots, headbutts, and short joint attacks powered by physical strength and momentum to disable your opponent and keep them close or keep them literally at arm's reach and pick apart their open defenses with fast looping kicks. It was also the simplest to train. All it required was someone willing to take a beating in order to learn its nuances due to how close one had to remain to an opponent to launch attacks and willing partners to be training dummies. Naruto had an abundance of both as this fit in best with his take 3 to give 1 brawling style and he had Kage Bunshin to beat on for as long as he needed. Naruto's head snapped up suddenly. Shiho-chan, what was that all about? You've got to be joking. He cried suddenly. He left his book and scrolls on the table and rushed through the archives to find Shiho standing with a smile on her face. Naruto dropped to his knees in front of her. Please tell me you're joking, Shiho-chan. I can't afford that. Shiho was fighting hard to keep from laughing out loud. I can't afford a 30,000 ryo fee for library use. Shiho broke down and started laughing. I'm sorry Uzumaki-kun, it was a joke. But it did end up proving my theory right. How did you know I said that? I was all the way over here. You told my clone, didn't you? Naruto said plainly as if it was unimportant. Shiho just stood there counting the seconds until it hit him what he had just said and realizing that him being his years dead last might not be so unfounded. Wait, you told my clone. How did I know about it? Shish, Shiho said trying to settle him down. I don't know, but you obviously get your clone's memories after they get dispelled. Do you know what this means? Naruto shook his head and a shine reflected off of the girl's glasses. You could read like 7 books at once as long as you use you clones and still get the information they got from it. Naruto's face lit up. So I can make my clones read these books while I train and do actual cool stuff. Shiho nodded. Yada, shish. The sounds of others audibly shushing Naruto erupted from all around the library, breaking Shiho into a mess of giggles as Naruto apologized quietly. Make some more of those Kage Bunshin, Uzumaki-kun. There's so much you need to know before you become an active ninja. You won't be a dead last by the time I'm through with you. Shiho grabbed onto Naruto's wrist and swiftly dragged him through different aisles, loading him up with books. He had to wonder what part of her wasn't conditioned to be a field ninja, because she was dragging him and half a dozen books around the place like they were weightless.